I found the eviction notice while looking for a pen in Marcus's desk drawer. It wasn't addressed to him. It was addressed to someone named David Chun. At this address, Marcus's apartment where I'd been spending most of my weekends for the past 8 months. The notice was dated 3 years ago, stamped "Final Warning" in aggressive red letters, with a handwritten note at the bottom. Belongings removed and placed in storage, August 2020. I stared at it, my brain trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Marcus's apartment, but an eviction notice for someone else. 3 years ago, I heard his key in the lock, shoved the paper back in the drawer, tried to look casual as he walked in, grocery bags in hand, that easy smile on his face that had made me fall for him in the first place. "Hey, beautiful, I got stuff for dinner. Thought we could do that pasta thing you like." "Sounds great," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was hammering. "Hey, random question. Do you know anyone named David Chun?" I watched his face, watched the smile falter, just for a microsecond, watched him recalibrate. David Chun? Doesn't ring a bell. Why? No reason. Just saw the name somewhere and thought it sounded familiar. He moved into the kitchen, started unpacking groceries. "You okay? You seem weird." "I'm fine. Just tired." But I wasn't fine, because Marcus had just lied to me, smoothly, easily, like he'd done it 1,000 times before. And suddenly, I was looking at everything differently. The apartment that was always immaculate but somehow impersonal, like a hotel room. The way he never had mail delivered here, said he had a P.O. box for security reasons. The landlord I'd never met, the lease I'd never seen, the way he'd been pushing me, gently but persistently, to move in with him and sell my house. Let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here, to this moment of standing in an apartment I suddenly realized I knew nothing about, with a man I was starting to suspect I knew even less about. I met Marcus 9 months ago at a charity gala my company sponsored. I was 34, recently out of a long-term relationship that had ended amicably but left me feeling like I'd wasted my 20s on someone I'd never really connected with. I owned my own home, a small 3-bedroom I'd bought 5 years ago with money I'd saved religiously since my first job. I had a good career in pharmaceutical sales, financial stability, no debt beyond my mortgage. I was content, not happy exactly but stable, safe, comfortable in a life I'd built carefully and deliberately. Marcus was everything my ex wasn't. Spontaneous where my ex had been predictable, passionate where my ex had been mild, attentive in ways that made me feel seen for the first time in years. He was a financial consultant, he'd said, worked with high-net-worth clients, managed portfolios, helped people maximize their investments. He was vague about specifics, client confidentiality. He'd explain with a charming smile, but he seemed successful. Always well-dressed, always picking up the check at nice restaurants, always planning weekend getaways to expensive hotels. "I like taking care of you," he'd say when I protested the extravagance. "Let me do this." And I'd let him, because it felt good to be taken care of. Because after years of being the responsible one, the planner, the person who always had everything figured out, it was nice to just be. We'd been dating for 3 months when he first mentioned moving in together. "You're here every weekend anyway," he'd said, pulling me close in his king-sized bed. "Why keep paying for a house you barely use?" "I love my house," I'd protested. "I worked hard for it." "I know, and I'm proud of you for that. But think about it, we could be together every day. No more driving back and forth. No more splitting our time. Just us, building a life." It was tempting. I was falling for him, hard and fast in a way I'd never experienced before. But something held me back. "Let me think about it," I'd said. He kissed my forehead. "Of course, no pressure. I just want to be with you as much as possible. Over the next few months." He brought it up regularly, always casually, never pushy, just persistent. "Have you thought more about moving in? My lease is up in 6 months. Would be perfect timing. I've been looking at this beautiful house in the suburbs. We could buy it together once you sell your place." And then, last week, the conversation had shifted. We were having dinner at his favorite steakhouse, always his favorite places, I realize now, never anywhere I suggested, when he reached across the table and took my hand. "I need to talk to you about something. Something serious." My stomach dropped. Those words never preceded anything good. "Okay. I'm in some financial trouble. Nothing I can't handle, but it's been stressful. And I've been thinking about us, about our future, about how we could help each other." "What kind of financial trouble?" "Business debt. Some investments that didn't pan out. I owe about $80,000 to various creditors. It's manageable, but it's affecting my credit, my business, my ability to plan for our future."
"I'm sorry, Marcus."
"That's really stressful. How can I help?" "Well, That's what I wanted to talk to you about. He squeezed my hand. Your house is worth about 300,000, right? And you owe what, about 180 on the mortgage? Something like that. So if you sold it, you'd clear about 120,000 after closing costs and everything. What if you moved in with me, really moved in permanently, and used that money to pay off my debts? We could start fresh, build equity in a new place together, really commit to this relationship. I pulled my hand back. You want me to sell my house to pay your debts? When you say it like that, it sounds bad. But think about it, we're building a life together. My debt is holding us back. If we eliminate it, we can move forward. Buy a house together. Get engaged. Start planning a family if that's what you want. Marcus, I barely know anything about this debt. How did you accumulate $80,000 in business debt? Bad investments. A few clients who didn't pay. It happens in my industry. Why didn't you tell me about this before? I didn't want to burden you. I thought I could handle it myself. But it's gotten bigger than I can manage alone. And I realized we're partners. We should handle this together. By me liquidating my only major asset? It's not liquidating. It's investing. In us. In our future. I told him I needed to think about it. Spent the week feeling guilty for hesitating. For not immediately jumping in to help the man I loved. He'd been so good to me, so generous, so attentive. Wasn't this what partners did? Help each other? But something felt off. And I couldn't articulate what it was until I found that eviction notice. Marcus wasn't subletting this apartment from someone named David Chun. He wasn't even legally renting it. He'd somehow gained access to an apartment that someone else had been evicted from 3 years ago and had been living here illegally ever since. Which meant everything he'd told me about his life was potentially a lie. That night, after he went to sleep, I did something I'd never done before. I went through his things. His wallet first. Driver's license, Marcus James Holloway, 42 years old. 8 years older than he'd told me. A credit card in his name, declined when I looked up the bank. It had been canceled in 2019. Another ID from a gym that closed 2 years ago. Nothing current. Nothing legitimate. His phone was locked. I tried his birthday, the one he'd told me, and it didn't work. Tried the year he'd actually been born based on his license. It opened. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through his messages. Dozens of conversations with women. Recent conversations. While he'd been dating me. Hey beautiful. When can I see you again? I miss you. Let's get dinner this week. Can't wait to see you tonight. I felt sick. Physically sick. Ran to the bathroom and barely made it before I threw up. He wasn't just lying about the apartment. He was lying about everything. About us. About who he was. About what we were building. I splashed water on my face. Tried to breathe, tried to think. I couldn't confront him now. Couldn't let him know I'd discovered anything. Not until I knew more. Not until I understood what I was dealing with. I went back to bed. Lay next to him. This stranger who I'd been falling in love with. And forced myself to stay still and quiet until morning. The next day, after he left for what he called a client meeting, I called my sister Rachel. I need help, I said as soon as she answered. Can you come over? She was there in 20 minutes. I showed her the eviction notice, told her about the phone, the messages, the lies. Jesus Christ, she breathed. Autumn, you need to get out of there. Now. I need to know what I'm dealing with first. Who he really is. What he's really after. He's a con artist. Obviously. He wants you to sell your house and give him the money. That's what he's after. But why me? I'm not rich. My house is worth 300,000. But after the mortgage and everything, I'd only clear about 120. That's not some huge score. Maybe he's working multiple women at once. Maybe you're not the only one. Maybe 120,000 is enough for whatever he needs. The thought made my stomach turn. But it also made sense. The messages to other women. The vague stories about his work. The way he'd never introduced me to friends or family. Always said they lived far away or he was estranged from them. I need to know more, I said. Before I confront him or go to the police or whatever. I need to know what I'm actually dealing with. Rachel looked at me like I was insane. Why? Why do you need more information? You have enough to know he's dangerous and you need to run. Because I'm smarter than this. My voice cracked.
I'm careful.
I'm responsible. I don't fall for con artists. So either I'm completely losing my ability to judge people, or there's more to this story. And I need to know which one it is. Autumn, please, help me figure this out. Then I'll do whatever needs to be done. She sighed. Fine, but we're doing this my way. You're not going back to that apartment alone. And we're documenting everything. Over the next 3 days, Rachel and I became amateur investigators. We started with the apartment. The address belonged to a building owned by a property management company. Rachel called, pretending to be interested in renting, and asked about available units. The unit Marcus was living in wasn't available. It was occupied by a long-term tenant who's current on rent, so someone was paying rent. But it wasn't Marcus. And it wasn't David Chun, who'd been evicted 3 years ago. We pulled public records, found out the apartment was being rented by a woman named Sandra Ortiz. But when we looked her up, Sandra Ortiz had died in 2021, a year after David Chun was evicted. Somehow Marcus had gotten access to an apartment being paid for by a dead woman's estate or something equally convoluted, and had been living there rent-free. Next, we looked into Marcus's business. He'd said he was a financial consultant, but there was no business license in his name.
No LLC.
No professional certifications. Nothing. His LinkedIn was impressive. Said he'd worked for 3 different investment firms over the past 15 years. Rachel called each one, pretending to be verifying employment for a rental application. None of them had ever heard of Marcus Holloway. "This is bad," Rachel said after the 3rd failed verification. "Autumn, this man doesn't exist. At least not in any legitimate sense. We tried Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. He had profiles on all of them, but they were sparse. Photos going back only about 2 years. No old friends tagging him in memories. No family photos. Nothing that suggested a real history. He's a ghost," I said. "He built an identity from scratch. Or he's running from something. Previous identity. Warrant. Something." We searched court records. Found 3 Marcus Holloways in our state, but none matched his age or description. Expanded to nationwide. Found dozens, but none that matched the man I knew. "What about his real name?" Rachel asked. "What if Marcus Holloway isn't who he really is?" We didn't have fingerprints or DNA, but we had his photo. Rachel had a friend who worked in law enforcement who owed her a favor. She sent the photo with a vague story about a custody case. 2 days later, her friend called back. "Your guy's name isn't Marcus Holloway. It's Martin Hollister. He's got a record fraud, identity theft, check kiting. Did 2 years in federal prison. Released in 2019. He's on probation, but he violated by leaving the state. There's a warrant out for him in Nevada." I felt the room spin. Federal prison. Fraud. Identity theft. Warrant. "There's more," Rachel's friend continued. "We think he's part of a larger operation. Romance fraud, specifically targeting single women with assets. Gets them to liquidate, then disappears. The FBI's been tracking him for about a year, but he keeps moving, changing names, staying ahead of them." After Rachel hung up, we sat in silence. "You were a mark," Rachel said finally. "That's all you ever were to him. A target." "How many?" I asked. "How many women has he done this to? Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters. Because if I'm just one of dozens, that's different than if I'm one of 3 or 4. It means he's done this enough times to perfect it. To know exactly what to say, how to make someone fall for him, when to push, how hard." You're right. He knew exactly what he was doing. Every moment, every word, every gesture. It was all calculated. The man I'd been falling in love with didn't exist. Had never existed. He was a character Martin Hollister played to separate women from their money. "What do I do?" I asked. "You go to the FBI. You give them everything we've found. You let them handle it. And Marcus Martin, he just gets arrested? That's it. That's justice, Autumn. That's him facing consequences." But I wanted more than that. I wanted him to know that I'd figured it out. That I wasn't the naive Mark he thought I was. That he'd underestimated me. "I have a better idea," I said slowly. "What if we play along? What if I tell him yes, that I'll sell my house and give him the money? We set up the trap, and the FBI can catch him in the act." "That's dangerous. But it's also smart. If he's been evading the FBI for a year, they need someone on the inside. Someone he trusts. Someone who can help them catch him." Rachel looked doubtful. "You'd have to pretend everything is fine. Keep dating him. Keep acting like you don't know. That's a lot of emotional manipulation to handle." "He manipulated me for 9 months. I can handle a few weeks." It was decided. Rachel would contact the FBI. I'd continue the relationship, act like I was considering his proposal, eventually agree to sell my house. The FBI would monitor everything, and when Martin tried to collect the money, they'd be waiting. It should have been simple. It wasn't. The next time I saw Martin, I had to pretend everything was normal. Had to smile when he kissed me. Had to let him touch me without flinching. Had to act like I was still the naive woman he thought I was. "Have you thought more about what we discussed?" he asked over dinner that night. About selling your house? I said carefully.
I'm scared, honestly.
It's a big step. I know, but we're worth it, right? We're building something real. Real. Nothing about this was real, but I smiled. We are, and I want to help you. I want us to have a fresh start. His face lit up. Really? You'll do it. I need to talk to a realtor first, figure out timeline and pricing. But yes, I think this is right. For us. He reached across the table and grabbed my hand. You have no idea how much this means to me. How much you mean to me. I love you, Autumn. I love you too. I lied. The words tasted like ash. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with a realtor, one chosen by the FBI who was in on the operation. We listed my house, got it staged, started taking showings. Marcus was attentive during this time, more affectionate than ever, planning our future out loud. The house we'd buy together, the trips we'd take, the life we'd build. Every word was a knife, because I knew it was all fake, all manipulation, all designed to keep me compliant until he got what he wanted. The FBI agents I was working with, Agent Morrison and Agent Keene, warned me not to let my guard down. He's done this before, Agent Morrison said during one of our check-ins. Multiple times, and he's good at reading people. If he suspects anything, he'll run. We need you to stay in character. How many women has he done this to? I asked. How much has he stolen? They exchanged a glance. We've confirmed 7 victims over the past 5 years. Total losses around $800,000. But we think there are more who haven't come forward. $800,000. 7 women. Maybe more. I wasn't special. I was just next in line. What happened to them? I asked. The other women? Financial ruin, mostly. He convinces them to liquidate assets, then disappears with the money. By the time they realize what's happened, he's moved on. New city, new name, new victims. Did any of them see it coming?
No.
That's what makes him so dangerous. He's charming, believable. He makes you feel like you're the center of his universe. Right until the moment he takes everything and leaves. Agent Keene added, he's also escalating. The amounts are getting bigger. The timelines are getting shorter. We think he's either getting desperate or preparing for something big. One final score before he disappears for good. And I'm that final score. We think so. Your house is worth more than his previous victims' assets. If he can get you to liquidate everything and hand it over, that's his retirement fund. The thought made me sick and angry in equal measure. But it also made me determined. He wasn't going to get away with this. Not this time. My house sold faster than expected. A young couple, first-time buyers, fell in love with it immediately. They offered asking price, waived inspection, wanted to close in 30 days. Marcus was thrilled. This is perfect. Everything's falling into place exactly like it's supposed to. Yeah, I said. Perfect. The closing was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Marcus wanted to be there. Said he wanted to support me through such a big moment. The FBI said absolutely not. Too risky. They couldn't control the environment with him present. Instead, they'd wire me. I'd meet him afterwards, tell him the closing went great, arrange to transfer the funds to his account. That's when they'd move in. The morning of the closing, I was a wreck. Agent Morrison went over the plan one more time. You go to closing, sign the papers, receive the check. You're wired, so we'll be monitoring everything. Then you meet Marcus at the restaurant like planned. You tell him you have the money. When he asks you to transfer it or give him the check, we move in. Got it. Got it. And Autumn? Don't try to be a hero. Just stick to the script. Let us do our job. I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't stick to the script. I needed Marcus Martin to know. Needed him to understand that he'd been caught, that I'd figured it out, that he'd lost. The closing went smoothly. I signed papers mechanically, thinking about everything this house represented. My independence, my hard work, my safety net. And I was signing it away. Not really. The FBI had arranged for the funds to go into a secured account, but symbolically it felt like loss. The couple buying it seemed nice, young, excited, full of plans for renovations and babies and futures. Everything I'd thought I was building with Marcus. Everything that had been a lie. After the closing, I drove to the restaurant where I was supposed to meet Marcus. The wire felt heavy under my blouse. Agent Morrison's voice came through the tiny earpiece. We're in position, just like we practiced. Stay calm. Marcus was already there, waiting in a booth in the back. He stood when he saw me, pulled me into a hug that made my skin crawl. How'd it go? Are you okay? I know that was hard. It was hard, I said honestly, saying goodbye to my house, to that part of my life. But you're saying hello to so much more. To our life. Together. We sat, ordered drinks, made small talk. He kept asking about the closing, about the check, about when we could handle the transfer. Soon, I kept saying. Let me just process this first. He was getting anxious. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way he kept checking his phone. He wanted the money, wanted it now, wanted to disappear before I could change my mind or figure out what he really was. Too late for that. Marcus, I said finally, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course, always. Who's David Chun? I watched his face, watched every micro-expression. The confusion that was just a beat too slow, the careful neutrality that followed. I don't know who that is. Why? Because I found an eviction notice in your apartment. For David Chun, dated 3 years ago. That must be from a previous tenant. Before I moved in. Really? Because the apartment is being paid for by a dead woman named Sandra Ortiz. And you've never shown me a lease, or introduced me to your landlord, or received mail at that address. His expression shifted, not to guilt or fear, to cold calculation. He was assessing the situation, figuring out his next move. What are you saying, Autumn? I'm saying I know you're lying. About the apartment. Probably about everything else too. Agent Morrison's voice in my ear. Autumn, stick to the script. Don't confront him yet. But I couldn't stop. Months of lies, of manipulation, of being made to feel crazy for my instincts. It all came pouring out. I know your real name is Martin Hollister. I know you've done this before. I know there are at least 7 other women you've scammed. I know you're on probation. I know there's a warrant for your arrest. The restaurant seemed to go quiet, though I knew that was just my perception. Marcus Martin sat perfectly still. You went through my things, he said softly. You've been lying to me for 9 months. Everything I felt for you was real. Nothing about you is real. He leaned back, and for the first time I saw the real him. Not the charming consultant, not the devoted boyfriend, but the predator. Cold, calculating, dangerous. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. You don't know who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. Ako un artist. Criminal. Someone who preys on women and ruins their lives. Agent Morrison's voice. Autumn, get out of there. Now, he's escalating. But Martin was faster. He stood abruptly, knocking the table. My water glass crashed to the floor. You think you're so smart, he hissed. You think you figured it all out. But you have no idea what you've just done. I've stopped you from stealing from me. That's what I've done. You've made an enemy. And trust me, you don't want me as an enemy. He turned to leave. FBI agents materialized from nowhere. Other diners who weren't actually diners, the waiter who wasn't actually a waiter. Martin Hollister, you're under arrest. I watched them handcuff him, watched him struggle, watched him finally go still. His eyes locked on mine, full of hatred. This isn't over, he said as they led him away. You hear me? This isn't over. Agent Morrison appeared at my side. Are you okay? I wasn't okay. I was shaking, adrenaline crashing, the reality of what had just happened hitting me all at once. Did I do the right thing? I asked, confronting him like that? You didn't follow the script, but you also got him to show his true colors on recording. So yeah, you did good. They took me to FBI headquarters to give a formal statement, asked me to walk them through everything. How we met, what he'd said, how he'd pressured me, everything I discovered. Took hours. By the time I left, it was dark. Rachel was waiting in the parking lot to drive me home. Except I didn't have a home anymore. I sold it. Even though the FBI had secured the funds, even though I hadn't actually given Martin the money, my house was gone. Bought by that nice young couple who'd been so excited about their future. You can stay with me, Rachel said, as long as you need. I don't understand how I fell for it, I said as we drove. How I didn't see what he was. Because he's a professional. He does this for a living. You're not stupid or naive. You're just human. But I felt stupid. Felt like I'd ignored every red flag. Felt like I'd been so desperate to be loved that I'd overlooked obvious lies. The other women, I said, the other victims, do they feel like this? Like they should have known? Probably. That's part of his crime. He doesn't just steal money. He steals confidence, trust, the ability to believe in your own judgment. We drove in silence for a while. What happens now? I asked. Now the FBI builds their case. You'll probably have to testify, and you figure out what comes next. For you, your life, your future. I don't even know where to start. You start by being gentle with yourself. by acknowledging that you survived something traumatic, by giving yourself time to heal. Over the next few weeks, I learned more about Martin Hollister than I ever wanted to know. He'd been running this scam for nearly a decade. The 7 confirmed victims were just the ones who'd reported him. There were likely dozens more who'd never come forward, either out of embarrassment or because they didn't realize they'd been conned until it was too late. His pattern was always the same. Meet a woman, usually through dating apps or social events. Target someone financially stable but emotionally vulnerable. Love bomb them for 3 to 6 months. Introduce a financial crisis. Suggest they help him buy liquidating assets. Disappear with the money. The amounts varied. 50,000, 100,000. Once, 250,000 from a widow who'd sold her late husband's business. He was good at reading people, knew exactly what they needed to hear, became whatever they needed him to be. For me, he'd been confident and spontaneous because my ex had been passive and predictable. He'd been attentive because I'd felt invisible. He'd been passionate because I'd been lonely. He'd studied me, learned me, used everything I'd told him about myself and my past relationships against me. And I'd fallen for it completely. The case moved quickly. Martin had violated probation, which meant he couldn't bond out. He sat in jail while the FBI built an airtight case against him for fraud, identity theft, and a dozen other charges. I was contacted by a victim advocate who worked with the other women he'd scammed. She asked if I'd be willing to speak with some of them, help them process what had happened. I agreed, even though I wasn't sure I'd processed it myself. We met at a community center on a rainy Tuesday evening. 7 women, ranging in age from 28 to 62. All of us had been targeted by Martin Hollister. All of us had believed his lies. The oldest woman, Patricia, had lost her entire retirement savings, $250,000. He'd convinced her to invest in a can't-miss opportunity, then disappeared. The youngest, Megan, had liquidated her small business to pay his tax debt, $30,000 that represented years of hard work. Each story was slightly different, but the pattern was the same. He'd identified what they needed, become that, extracted resources, and vanished. "I feel so stupid," Megan said, crying. "Everyone tells me I should have known, that it was obvious. But it wasn't obvious. He was perfect, until he wasn't." "You're not stupid," Patricia said firmly. "He's a professional liar. This is what he does. None of us should feel ashamed for being human enough to believe that someone could love us." We talked for hours, sharing stories, crying together, slowly starting to understand that we weren't alone, that this wasn't our fault, that Martin Hollister was the criminal, not us. By the end of the evening, we'd formed a strange sort of support group. Women bonded by the man who'd tried to destroy us. "Are you going to testify?" Patricia asked me as we were leaving. "Yes. You?" "Absolutely. I want him to see my face. Want him to know that he didn't break me, that I survived him." "Me too." The trial was scheduled for 6 months out. In the meantime, I had to figure out how to rebuild my life. I'd gotten my house sale money back. The FBI had frozen Martin's accounts and secured the funds before he could access them. But the young couple had already bought my house. It was theirs now. I could have asked them to sell it back to me, could have complicated their lives the way mine had been complicated. But they were innocent. They'd done nothing wrong. And somehow, starting over in a new place felt right. I found an apartment, small but mine. Furnished it slowly, deliberately, with things that made me happy instead of things that would impress someone else. Started therapy. Real therapy, not just victim support groups. Worked through the trauma, the betrayal, the shame, the anger. My therapist asked me once what I'd learned from the experience. That I'm stronger than I thought, I said, and more fragile, both at the same time. How so? I'm fragile enough to have fallen for his lies, to have wanted love so badly that I ignored red flags. But I'm strong enough to have figured it out, to have helped catch him, to be sitting here, doing the work to heal instead of just pretending it didn't happen. That's not fragility. That's being human. We all want connection. We all want to believe the best in people. That's not weakness. Then why does it feel like weakness? Because we live in a world that tells us we should always be able to protect ourselves. That if something bad happens, we must have done something wrong. But sometimes bad things happen to people who did everything right. Sometimes predators are just good at what they do. I knew she was right, but accepting it was harder. 6 months after Martin's arrest, the trial began. I sat in a courtroom with the other victims, watching him in his suit and tie, looking nothing like the man who'd manipulated us. He looked respectable, professional, like someone you'd trust with your money. That was the most frightening part. He still looked trustworthy. The prosecution built their case methodically. Bank records, text messages, photos, testimony from each of us about what he'd done. Martin's defense was that these were consensual gifts, that the women had willingly given him money, that he'd never forced anyone. But the pattern was undeniable. Same playbook, different victims, over and over. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the witness stand with my head high, looked directly at Martin, refused to let him see any fear. The prosecutor walked me through my story, how we'd met, how he'd love-bombed me, how he'd gradually introduced the financial crisis, how he'd pressured me to sell my house. Did you believe him? The prosecutor asked. When he said he was in financial trouble? Yes, completely. He was very convincing. Did you have any indication that he was lying? Not until I found the eviction notice. Before that, I trusted him absolutely. Why? Because he'd spent 9 months becoming exactly what I needed. He'd studied me, learned my vulnerabilities, used them against me. He was perfect at being whoever I needed him to be. Martin's lawyer cross-examined me aggressively, tried to paint me as a desperate woman who'd made bad decisions, tried to suggest I'd known what I was doing. But I held firm, answered every question calmly, refused to be shamed. When I stepped down, Patricia squeezed my hand. You did great. Did I? I feel like I just relived the worst period of my life in front of strangers. You told the truth. That's all we can do. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Martin Hollister was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Restitution to all his victims. Permanent prohibition from working in finance. It should have felt like victory, like justice. Instead, it just felt sad. 15 years of his life gone. Dozens of women traumatized. Millions of dollars lost. All because one man had decided other people's lives were his to exploit. After the sentencing, the victim's advocate organized a meeting for all of us. A closure ceremony, she called it. We met at the same community center where we'd first gathered. 7 women who'd been strangers a year ago, now bonded by shared trauma and survival. Patricia spoke first. I wanted to hate him. For years, I wanted to hate him. But I realized that hating him was giving him power over me. So instead, I choose to focus on what I learned. About myself. About resilience. About the strength it takes to trust again after being betrayed. Others shared similar sentiments. How they'd grown. How they'd learned to forgive themselves. How they were rebuilding. When it was my turn, I said, I lost a lot in this. Money, time, a house I loved, my ability to trust easily. But I gained something too. I gained the knowledge that I'm stronger than I thought. That I can survive something that felt unsurvivable. That I'm not defined by what happened to me, but by how I chose to respond to it. And how did you choose to respond? Megan asked. By helping catch him. By testifying. By being here with all of you. By choosing to heal instead of hide. By refusing to let him take anything more from me than he already has. We all held hands. 7 women. Dozens of shared losses. But also shared strength. Shared survival. To us, Patricia said, raising an imaginary glass. To surviving. To healing. To being brave enough to trust again. To us, we echoed. A year after Martin's conviction, I bought a new house. Smaller than my first one. But it was mine. Earned with my own money. No one else's name on the deed. I dated occasionally, carefully, with better boundaries, with more awareness of red flags, but also with hope that not everyone was a predator, that real love existed somewhere. Emma, one of the other victims, had become a close friend. We met for coffee weekly, processed our experiences, supported each other through the ongoing healing. Do you think we'll ever trust someone completely again? She asked one day. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe complete trust isn't the goal anymore. Maybe healthy skepticism mixed with hopeful openness is the new normal. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also safer. And after what we went through, safe feels important. She nodded. Do you ever wonder what Martin is doing? In prison. Sometimes. But mostly I try not to think about him at all. He doesn't deserve space in my head anymore. Have you forgiven him?
No.
And I don't think I ever will. But I've forgiven myself. For falling for it, for not seeing it sooner, for being human enough to want love so badly that I ignored warning signs. That's probably healthier than forgiving him anyway. Probably. 2 years after the trial, I met someone new, James. He was patient with my caution, understanding about my boundaries, transparent in ways Martin never had been. I had a bad experience. I told him on our 3rd date, with someone who lied about who he was. It made me very careful. That's understandable, he said. Take whatever time you need. I'm not going anywhere. And he didn't. Through months of careful dating. Through my insistence on meeting his family and friends. Through background checks I ran, openly, with his knowledge and permission. Through all the ways trauma had made me hypervigilant. He stayed. Patient. Consistent. Real. You know I'm not him, right? James said one night 6 months into dating. I'm not going to hurt you. I know. Intellectually. But convincing my nervous system is harder. Then we'll take as long as you need for your nervous system to catch up. 3 years after Martin's conviction, I got a letter. From him. From prison. I stared at it for a week before opening it. Dear Autumn, it began. I know you don't want to hear from me. I know I have no right to contact you. But I'm writing anyway because I need to say something.
I'm sorry.
I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't undo what I did. Doesn't give you back your house or your peace of mind or the months I stole from you. But I need you to know that I understand now what I did. In prison, I've had a lot of time to think, to process, to finally face what I've been running from my entire adult life. I hurt you, deeply, intentionally, and I'm sorry. You were kind to me, generous, trusting, and I used all of that against you, made you doubt yourself, made you question your judgment, made you feel crazy when your instincts were screaming that something was wrong. That was cruel, unforgivable. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to know that I finally understand the damage I caused. Not just financially, but emotionally, psychologically, the way I made you doubt your ability to trust yourself. I'm in therapy now, court-mandated, but I'm actually engaging with it, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt people who'd never done anything to me. My therapist says I'm a narcissist, that I lack empathy, that I see people as objects to be used rather than humans with feelings and lives. She's probably right, but I'm trying to change, to be better, to understand what it means to be human instead of a predator. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm trying. I hope you're well. I hope you've healed. I hope you found someone who treats you the way you deserve to be treated. And I hope someday you can think about what happened without it hurting.
I'm truly sorry.
Martin, I read the letter 3 times, felt a complicated swirl of emotions, anger that he'd contacted me, satisfaction that he was finally taking responsibility, skepticism about whether his remorse was real or just another manipulation. I showed it to James. What do you want to do with this? He asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to write back. Tell him he's right. He was cruel and what he did was unforgivable. Part of me wants to burn it and never think about him again. Both are valid choices. What would you do? I'd probably burn it. But I'm not you. You get to decide what brings you peace. I decided not to respond, not to give Martin any more of my time or energy. He'd gotten enough, but I kept the letter, put it in a box with all the other documents from that period of my life. Evidence, proof, a reminder of what I'd survived. 4 years after Martin's conviction, James proposed. Small, intimate, just us on a hiking trail we both loved. I want to spend my life with you, he said. I want to build something real, something honest, something that makes us both happy. Are you sure? I asked, only half joking. I come with a lot of baggage. Everyone comes with baggage. Yours just happens to include a con artist ex-boyfriend and some well-earned trust issues. I can handle that. What if I'm difficult? What if I question everything? What if I can never fully trust you? Then we'll work on it. Together. For as long as it takes. I said yes. We got married a year later. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. No elaborate plans. No pressure. Just 2 people choosing each other. The other victims came, Patricia, Emma, Megan. They'd all become important parts of my life. Sisters forged in trauma and survival. Look at us, Patricia said at the reception. We survived. We healed. We found happiness again. Not just happiness, Emma added. We found ourselves. We found strength we didn't know we had. And we found each other, I said. That might be the most important thing. Knowing we're not alone. At my wedding, surrounded by people who loved me, married to a man who saw me fully and chose me anyway, I realized something. Martin hadn't destroyed me. He'd tried, but he'd failed. I was still here, still standing, still capable of love and trust and joy. He was in prison. I was free, and that was the best revenge I could have asked for. So was I the asshole for not wanting to move in with my partner and sell my house to pay off his debts? No. I was the woman who trusted her instincts, who investigated when something felt wrong, who protected herself instead of sacrificing everything for someone who didn't deserve it. I was the woman who survived, who healed, who learned that being careful doesn't mean being closed off, that protecting yourself is an act of self-love, not selfishness. I was the woman who built a life worth living, with people worth trusting, who learned that real love doesn't ask you to destroy yourself. And I was the woman who finally understood that I deserved better, and refused to settle for less.